Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. Today is Monday, June 24th. My name is Ryan Sampson. He's Joel Sherman. The Yankees dropped their third straight series, losing 2 out of 3 to the Atlanta Braves, and they dropped 2 out of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles since the last time we spoke to Joel. Joel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me always.
Yeah, listen, a lot has happened in this past week to what I alluded to besides just losing these series. Injuries, roster moves. So we wanted to break down and hit you with a lot of things here. But instead of first pitch, I got to start off, though, with the team's recent struggles. The Yankees fans feel like they're going to be very negative this week, considering they just lost 2 out of. Yeah, I think so. And,
The
I'm probably going to say
162-0 season didn't happen, so now they're crying.
Listen, it's the June swoon. I think a lot of Yankees fans are feeling it, but at the same time, I think they faced two very, very good teams that we need to put ourselves in check here a little bit. But I got to start off with the first question of the team's recent struggles. How much do you put it on the injuries that have happened recently with Soto with the forearm, Judge getting hit by the pitch, and now Stanton goes on the IL with the hamstring tightness? Can you elaborate? Is that what the team struggles are going towards because of those three premier players dealing with injuries?
Well, I mean, part of the thing I would always encourage, which is always difficult when you're a fan, is to look at things from 20,000 feet. How many games do you expect this Yankee team to win? Looking at the roster,
100.
Well, they're going to win 100 probably. They're probably on that pace unless things go badly. The injuries you'd mentioned, would you rather have those injuries or have lost 3 starting pitchers?
I would rather those 3 injuries, probably.
Right. The Orioles, the team they're in a fight with, have lost 3 starting pitchers from their rotation. There's no crying in baseball.
No.
Okay? Everyone's going to lose people. Everyone's going to lose series and games. I think the Yankees, we have talked about this on this show, which is they probably played over their head because their starting pitching was over their head without Cole for a couple of months of the season. Once the starting pitching regressed somewhat, we then saw something we have said is a problem with this team, which is their bullpen, have to get exposed, right? When you're throwing 6, 7 innings with some regularity, even 5 innings, Aaron Boone is using who he wants, how he wants, lots of rest, etc. When you have to get a lot of outs, we saw this with the Mets over especially the first few months of the season. They'd be in every game, but their starter was out after 9, 12, 15 outs at maximum, and a bullpen that at best was league average was being stretched and pulled in every direction. And the Yankee bullpen, which is going to need additions either internally, does someone like Scott Effross get healthy and help them? Does Clayton Beeter get healthy in the minors and get moved into that role? Do they go out? I think no matter what happens, I would put the under-over at how many relievers they acquire at 1.5, and I would bet the over because I think they get at least 2 and maybe 3 because – Ryan, I do think they're a 100-win team or a 95-win team. And when Brian Cashman's had that kind of team, they've kind of gone for it at the deadline. I think they'll be very realistic that that's an area of incredible need because they've had either injury, Loisaga, or regression, or they didn't do very well in the trades for the lefties from the Dodgers this offseason. And so they are going to have to address it. But every team – They had run off an incredible streak of not losing series, and now they've lost some. And one more thing to just remember, 20,000 feet. Yankees have essentially kicked the crap out of the Astros this year. The Orioles did their thing with the Yankees and then got swept by the Astros.
I knew you were going to say this.
This is the baseball season, and it's a word we've used a lot on this, which is myopic. Mm-hmm. What's going on with my team? And my team only, what's their successes and failures? And when you look at the big, wide world, I would be more worried. If I were a Yankee fan, I would be like, did we breathe a little life into the Red Sox as opposed to the Orioles, who we know are good? That would be my concern because the Red Sox are in some ways a hard-to-explain team, except for they're getting performance from people we didn't anticipate. Now, over 162 games, will that go away? Will Tanner Houck not pitch as well? Cutter Crawford, Jarren Duran, all the guys they're getting really high level performance out of. Because I do remember there was a lot of screaming in the offseason that the Red Sox didn't spend enough money on starting pitching, and their starting pitching has been excellent. And that's with the one guy they did spend on, Lucas Giolito, needing Tommy John surgery in spring trading. So baseball season's a strange thing. It twists and turns, and I know in bad times. Now, unless you think the Yankees are a bad team,
No, I don't.
right? Like, are the Yankees a bad team, or are they a team that's going through a bad time? 2 years ago, their second half was revelatory, right? They everything but Judge was a struggle. I remember I was looking at this because I wrote something recently about the Tigers sold in 2015. One of the teams that bought from them was the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays were pretty well behind the Yankees at this time of year, but had a very positive run differential, and they thought the Yankees were soft. And they went and got David Price and Troy Tulowitzki and a couple of other things, and they just raced by the Yankees. And so to me, it is possible to believe that the Yankees kind of have, for want of a better term, shot their load already this season. Is this the best that we're going to see of it? I would want to see more. I would just say for now, this is the normal part of the baseball season, and they're undergoing some performance and health slumps that they didn't over the first 70 games of the season.
Fair enough. I it's not so much about, for me, the injuries like impact. I mean, the injuries do impact the team, but everyone else deals with injuries as well. The follow-up I have with the Judge, Stanton, Soto's power hasn't been there recently, just since that forearm injury. We have not seen him hit a home run yet. So I do ask some questions. Is he still dealing with that forearm tightness? Does that affect him? Is it a mental thing, how he's handling that? Judge seems fine after getting hit on the pitch by the hand. He had a couple home runs again. He looks good. Stanton, you have to expect the injury, right? Because this happens every single year with him, and it's a lower body injury again. And the question I have is, and you alluded to it a little bit, 2022, right? If Stanton comes back and isn't what he was pre-injury, because he was really, really good for this team as a DH. He was performing well, hitting some home runs, hitting with runners in scoring position well. What's he going to be when he comes back from this couple-week injury? And are we going to see Juan Soto back to being a product? Because they need a force in the lineup with him and Judge. That's how this Yankees team was winning games. So that is my follow-up there is, can Soto return back to being a little bit more power? Or is that injury still something that's going to be in his head the rest of the way? And what are they going to get from Stanton the rest of the way?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really answer either question on Soto or Stanton. Who knows? But I think we're burying this a little bit, which is I think the Yankees have and part of this is he's not playing anymore, an Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres problem. That was a problem when Soto was hitting for power and Stanton was in the lineup, and it was being camouflaged by how well, especially Soto and Judge, and to some degree Stanton and also Anthony Volpe were performing. They had a very strong top of the lineup, but the length of the lineup was worrisome. That's essentially their starting infield without Volpe. And let's take Rizzo out of it. And even to some degree, I take LeMahieu, who's been an injured player who's in his mid-30s, out of it, but he's certainly somebody they're putting on the field, and they were hoping for the best, like he performed in the second half last season. Gleyber Torres is smack in the middle of his career, of his prime. Is he being bothered by this being his walk year? Is he thinking about free agency? Does he know down deep the Yankees aren't going to keep him, even if whether he performed great or lousy, the chances that they keep him are not great. Does he know that this is the only place he's ever played Major League Baseball? Because if Gleyber Torres were an 800 OPS guy, a 750 OPS guy, we'd feel a little different about their lineup. But he's not, and it's really hurting him. And at the point where you start suffering injuries to Rizzo and Stanton, you can't say, well, we'll give him a little rest. You've got to hope he ignites. You've got to hope that LeMahieu ignites. You've got to hope that Verdugo wakes up from whatever has been going on for a while now. You have to hope that there is an offensive side to Austin Wells. Perhaps Ben Rice can hit. This is the moment. What good teams do when, like the Yankees did, by the way, with Garrett Cole. When a key player is missing, other players step up. You reveal the depth of your roster and your character at bad times. And the Yankees are going to have both tested yet again right now.
No, that's fair enough. And you brought up Ben Rice there a little bit, but I do want to go back to Gleyber Torres in this infield, because the way it's been, like you said, who's going to step up and perform in this next month when you're down Rizzo and you're down, LeMahieu? I just don't know what's going to happen there, but they acquired JD Davis. That was another thing that happened yesterday. So is this a tryout, you would say, for JD Davis and Ben Rice to see, hey, can you grab a hold of these positions? Because we really don't know what we're going to get from Anthony Rizzo when he does come back, because he was not performing well even before the injury.
Yeah. So this is, again, one of those moments where I would ask people not to just look at the Yankees, which is the league is hitting 240. The only time it's going to be lower is 1968, which was the year of the pitcher. They had to raise the mound 10 inches as a result of it. Lower the mound 10 inches as a result of it, to try to get some more offense in the game. They've done everything to try to put offense into the game, and still scoring is down. Batting average remains down. Between the pitching and learning how to shift within the shift restrictions, hitting is as difficult as it is. And when people say, well, they've got to go get a first baseman and a third baseman, I always have two responses. What time does the first base, third base store open? And when it does open, who's there? Most teams are struggling at multiple positions because the league-wide batting average, the league-wide scoring is bad. So if I just said, I wrote over the weekend, the Yankees should be their fans should be rooting like crazy for the Astros to suck. It was I'm sure in the moment you want the Astros to beat the Orioles if you're a Yankee fan, because those are the two teams that are together. But once the Orioles leave town, you want that team to start losing, because to me, Alex Bregman is a very good fit for the Yankees. Ryan Presley is a very good fit for the Yankees. They're both free agents at the end of the season.
Are you trolling us, Joel?
What's that?
Are you trolling us right now with Astro players for Yankees?
I'm not trolling you. I think there's you could only buy from limited stores. And if suddenly you just have this, 2017 gag reflex, you're going to take away one of the stores you can buy from. And the Yankees have already done this. Marwin Gonzalez was a big cheater on that team, and he was on the team already. So please take the sanctimony and throw that shit in the toilet and flush, okay? You'll take the players that will help your team, okay? And by the way, Presley wasn't even on the 17 team. Of course, Bregman was. But eliminate the Astros. Start playing the game of which teams do you imagine. There's a problem for obvious buyers like the Yankees and the Orioles and the Dodgers. You had 9 teams within about 2 or 3 games of a wild card in the National League. The only 2 teams in the National League who've been kind of out and out eliminated are the Marlins and Rockies. So you have 13 teams right now that are not in a sell mode. Some of that will change in the next few weeks. In the American League, 4 of the teams that are under 500 right now are the Rangers, Astros, Rays, and Blue Jays. Those are playoff teams last year. Those are teams that put their teams together this year trying to win a championship. So I'm sure they want to do everything possible to not sell. And so if I'm a Yankee fan or a Dodger fan or an Oriole fan or a Phillies or the Brewers, the teams that are the obvious buyers right now, I am rooting like hell that some of those National League teams fall, that the Rays and the Blue Jays and the Astros are they just keep falling, because it's, we're not going to do capitalism here, but we know the game about supply and demand. There's a lot of demand and there's not a lot of supply right now. So if we were going to try to solve the Yankees either first or third base, the world, you can't just make up a first baseman. You just can't make up a third baseman. And that's why I'm saying you're going to eliminate Alex Bregman. If he were available, how many other guys do you think are above average third basemen who actually begin to help you, who would be available? So sometimes you have to hold your nose and do what you think is right for your club.
No, yeah, I hear you.
And by the way, I don't think the Astros will sell.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that their owner is not kind of wired that way. But again, I mentioned over the weekend, I wrote the 2015 Tigers are the team to me most like these Astros. They've made the ALCS 4 straight years, including 1 World Series. They'd gone in 11, 12, 13, and 14. They were built to win in 15. their owner, Mike Ilitch, reached into his pocket constantly to raise the payroll in Detroit. They had record payrolls for them for a lot of years in there to try to win, because he was desperate to try to win before he passed away. He failed at that. So he was willing to support things. So that was like the last team that wanted to sell. And at the deadline, they traded David Price, Joakim Soria, and most importantly in New York, Yoenis Cespedes to the Mets, who used Cespedes and went to the World Series. So I disregard everyone who says they're not selling right now.
Yeah.
You're just a 7-game losing streak away from being definite sellers. And what else are you going to say now? You're going to tell your clubhouse and your fan base, yeah, we're giving up, right? Reality is going to set in over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll have some clear buyers and sellers. And if I were a Yankee fan, I'd be rooting for my team to win, and I'd pick a list of about 6 or 7 teams where I thought there were relievers and corner infielders and say, I hope those teams lose like crazy over the next 3 weeks.
Well, that's essentially what I'm trying to ask as well, Joel, is that, you know, you talked about it last week about ranking like Yankees needs from what they would do for the deadline. You mentioned bullpen, over 1.5 relievers most likely, but the corner infield spots, which we keep alluding to, are you convinced that the Yankees are going to try everything in their power? Because the roster moves they made this past week, calling up Ben Rice instead of Oswald Peraza, right? Because Anthony Rizzo goes down. DJ LeMahieu could play first every day, but you decide to keep him at third and not bring up Peraza and slide him over to first. So were you surprised that they said, Ben Rice, you're getting a full chance here. Let's give you a shot, organizational wise. And then, lineup questions I have as well. And talking about the length of the lineup, giving other guys a shot. You saw Jahmai Jones batting 5th the other day. I mean, I understand Jahmai Jones is a rally guy, like in the dugout for them, but he should not be batting 5th in the Yankees lineup. I understand there's injuries and things like that, but I guess there's questions there of what exactly the Yankees are looking for.
Yeah, well, I mean, you use the players you have at your disposal. I think the Yankees have explained what they think about Jahmai Jones. He's one of the least used players in the major leagues who was on an opening day roster. So it isn't like they're sitting there and going, we know we have this great item in Jahmai Jones. If we were, again, betting, is Jahmai Jones on the roster on August 1st? The likelihood is probably not, right? As they need those roster spots if they're able to get any of these corner players. So I think they're doing, it's going to be so redundant. Every team is doing this churn. The Mets are doing this churn. Everyone, they did it with Luis Torrens and Jose Iglesias. This is what every team does. But you're a Yankee fan, and this is a Yankee podcast, and they think they're the only team that's ever going through shit. And that's not reality. Everyone's doing it. So they're doing what a smart organization does. And they are smart, well-run baseball operations. Ben Rice was hitting in the minor leagues. I think he's shown in about 5 or 6 games that he does, he takes good at bats. Now they'll get a book on him, and will he continue to have good at bats, or will he have a 20 at bat period where he strikes out 15 times? I don't know. But if I were the Yankees, considering that the other people I have to look at is like LeMahieu, well, I just play Ben Rice at first base against lefties and righties. Unless it was a lefty I thought he had no shot against, I would just go ahead and play him and see what I have there. They churned and they went for J.D. Davis. It's the kind of thing is, I'm sure they looked at, Garrett Cooper and Jose Abreu and Mike Ford, all the guys who are out on the street right now who can play first base. Some of whom, like Ford and Cooper, are guys who were in the organization previously. See, everybody keeps a prep list. Hey, if I lose a guy, who can I go find on the street? J.D. Davis, if you get J.D. Davis in the right 40-game period, he's going to give you an 800 OPS. If you get him in the wrong 40-game period, he's going to give you a 550 OPS. The Yankees are going to hope that there's some lightning in the bottle, especially while Stanton's gone, and they could play him a little first, third DH and see what happens. I think regardless of what happens with Ben Rice and J.D. Davis, if they can land a corner infielder or a second baseman at this point, right? If this is Gleyber Torres, but again, I challenge you, Ryan and Tommy and all Yankee fans, go. This is not some CIA hidden list. Who plays second base in the major leagues. Go to Fangraphs, go to Baseball Reference. Start eliminating the ones that play for the Phillies, the Brewers, whatever. Look at the teams that might sell and say, yeah, I'm willing to give up collateral for this player. It's not going to be a long list.
No.
Offense kind of really does suck right now. And it's why don't we be positive? It's because pitching and defense is as brilliant as it's ever been at being able to defy hits.
No, I hear you, Joel. I hear you. It's going to be, I like Ben Rice. I was just wondering because, there was Peraza's had experience already in the majors. So I was just wondering.
He was performing poorly in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
At some point, you also have to, they knew the key item to bring up was offense. They were losing, when you lose Stanton, you don't think, how do we replace base running and defense? You think, how do we replace some bat? When you lose Rizzo, which is the Rice move, you think, how do you replace some offense? Though the offense wasn't very good from Rizzo. Rizzo had shown some signs in about the last 5 or 6 games he had played before he got hurt. It's why I never you can't give up on professional athletes. LeMahieu looked dead and then had a good second half last year. Stanton looked dead and again had turned into like a game turner if you make a mistake out over the plate. So could LeMahieu stir? Could Torres stir? Value is when you do things. Not only that you do it, the Yankees need those 2 veteran players to stir and get right and be useful to lengthen this lineup.
I agree, Joel. That's going to be what's key here over the next month or so.
And by the way, I'm a broken record on this. I actually still believe that Austin Wells will hit in the major leagues. And so, and I think his at-bats have been better for about a week or 2 here. And I wouldn't be afraid, because you lose the DH spot. If in a moment where you're really looking for offense, if you think against especially a right-hand pitcher, you're starting Trevino behind the plate, to just go ahead and use Wells as the DH.
Yeah, no, you do wonder if that's what's going to happen here with the opportunities that are there, right? And how you can mix and match the lineup and see what the opportunities you have. Joel, I want to hit you up on Do Up here, but it seems like we've already listed the 3 of the issues the Yankees recently been exposed. But if you were to list those 3 quickly for Do Up, the 3 issues, the top 3 that have been exposed by the Yankees within this past week and a half that you've seen.
Yeah, I think that all year their bullpen has been worrisome. They're in the bottom 3rd in strikeout percentage. I know the fans get crazed about Clay Holmes, but Clay Holmes has 2 of these a year. In general, he's better than most relief pitchers in baseball. They've really done a great job creating something out of Luke Weaver and having it. This is a go to Fangraphs, go to Baseball Reference. Start telling me the left-hand relievers you want on your team. The Yankees took a shot at 2, and Victor Gonzalez is already gone. And I would not bet on Caleb Ferguson being on the team on August 1st. Maybe, he is a guy who I think they think will strike out people if he's right, but there's just too many base runners against him, too much squaring up of the ball. It's not a comfortable feeling, I think, for Aaron Boone to go to that lefty right now. But left-hand relief, it's not. You'll see it. The Mets are in a situation. They've had just essentially Jake Diekman, who's a tightrope. He's one of the all-time walk leaders in history for relief pitchers. So there's always guys on against them, and they brought up Danny Young, who's pitched real well. The Yankees are going to have a Danny Young moment. They're going to have to, like Tim Hill or Misavich or whoever they bring up, somebody's going to have to hit for 30 innings. Or they're going to have to find, Miami is a team that's going to sell at the deadline. They have Andrew Nardi and Tanner Scott. Now, Tanner Scott is a lot like Diekman. There's a lot of walks and a lot of strikeouts, and he generally gets out of an inning before he gives up a run. But I'm telling you, that's going to be the kind of guy, if they went and got him, the Yankee fans will go, oh, Tanner Scott. And then the first time he's on the mound, it's going to be walk the first 2 guys, and you're going to be sitting there going, what a freaking nightmare this is. But you could only acquire who's available. Left-hand relieving is not deep in the sport, which is probably why the Yankees try to solve it in the offseason, including using a former first-round pick in Trey Sweeney to get Victor Gonzalez. It's nothing they need except for right-hand relievers are easy to find at the deadline. There'll be 15 righty relievers traded. If Texas doesn't get back into it, would you be surprised if David Robertson ended up a Yankee again? Or Tyler Yates is on that team, or Jose Leclerc. So I already named 3 guys with closing experience on the Rangers. So if I'm a Yankee fan, am I sitting going, God, I hope the Rangers don't win another game between now and July 30th, so some of that relief pitching gets out on the market?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the big concern, right? The lefty reliever out of the pen. If you had a list,
so I think another reliever is would it be perfect if it was left-handed?
right?
Yeah. But if you told me I could have a lefty or someone like Ryan Presley or Tyler Yates, I would take the guy who could be the partner and security blanket for Holmes as the number one thing needed. Because that kind of guy usually gets out lefties and righties, somebody who you can trust in the last 6 outs of a game. And I think their number one need at this second is to find another one of those. And having said that, Ryan, they'll be blessed if in the next 5 weeks they're not like, oh shit, this guy got hurt and now we need a starting pitcher too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then Joel, if you were to list the 2 other concerns or issues that you've seen from this team besides the bullpen, what else would they be?
Yeah, they're not getting enough offensive depth in their lineup, specifically because of 3 positions in the infield. So can they do that? And the freeway when Trevino catches is not comfortable. But I believe that good organizations go back to school on these things and they work with their pitchers on different hold times, and they at least slow it down. I would be much more concerned about that issue in October than I would be in the second half, because if you hit the wrong opponent like Baltimore or some athletic team that can, or Boston, suddenly Boston's a wild card, you're the top seed, and you're playing Boston in a 3 out of 5, or if the Yankees don't win the division, a 2 out of 3, and it's a freeway. And trust me, Alex Cora is going to pick at that scab if he can pick at the scab. That would be more worrisome to me. It's a problem now, but when everybody's focused on it in October, I would worry about it becoming even more exposed against the wrong opponent.
Fair enough. I agree with that. Joel, I was going to hit you up with a Radio Rational take on the bullpen, but you've kind of already alluded to what you're thinking here, and that there's not many bullpen pieces out there. The selling teams are not that much and far and few in between. It's tough for Brian Cashman and company to be able to piece this bullpen together.
They'll get it.
In your idea, does Scott Effross make this 2024 team? Is he going to pitch for them, or is it just a guy who's, it's an injury and we don't know when we're going to see him at all?
I was there a couple of days ago and I asked about Effross, kind of like low key, and the thing that came back was, yeah, he'll make it back. He hasn't pitched in 2 years. So what does make it back mean? That's part of the issue also, is like I could put a guy in a uniform who used to be Scott Effross and put him on the mound, or used to be Lou Trevino, who I think they'll get back later in the year. But will they be those were the 2 guys when the Yankees were in it in 2022, those were the 2 guys they traded for to build up the bullpen.
Right.
If those guys were healthy and pitching like they did in 2022, the Yankees would have far fewer problems. And I don't know what it means. It's 162 games, but you just saw it last night. When Canley really could throw his changeup, and when Holmes has better control, they lost the game yesterday. But if I were looking for something to be encouraged about, those last 6 outs looked overpowering for them yesterday. How much of that do they get the rest of the way? Brian Cashman has been a general manager for a long time now, over a quarter of a century for the Yankees. When his team is good, he has dropped the breadcrumbs of what he will do, which is go fix what he thinks is broken and be kind of relentless about it. And that when it's been a bullpen, he's gone and gotten Zach Britton. He went and got Canley and David Robertson in the same trade. He went and got Effross and Trevino, who were both good setup guys that year. I would be completely blown away if the Yankees stay a good team over the next 4 weeks, and I expect they'll stay kind of right at the top of the division in the race, if he doesn't get at least 2 relievers.
Yeah, and
because that's what he does.
Right.
That's his history.
Exactly. He is aggressive when he sees those opportunities. I do wonder.
And right-handed relievers are what always gets there'll be 15 righty relievers traded between now and 6 p.m. on July 30th.
Right. I wonder if there's an in-house fix here a little bit in the interim basis. And maybe I'm crazy for thinking this, and maybe this is the radio rational take. You know, we've defended Luis Gil and how great he's been all year long, but the last 3 starts have not been up to Luis Gil's standards, what he's performed up until that point. But then again, he's never pitched this much in the majors, putting this many innings on his arm. There's that thought of, do you slide him into the bullpen and maybe acquire a starter? And the starter may be harder to find than a reliever, but do you bring up, one of the guys like a Clayton Beater up from the minors, bring him into the rotation, or when a Petit, when he comes back, and you slide Luis Gil back into the bullpen and say, let's limit those innings on your arm and get that really nasty stuff in the bullpen towards the late end innings in relief and get that really strikeout stuff that you're missing.
Yeah, look, I think everything is open, but everything is open after July 30th.
Okay.
Unless you really think that over the next 30 days the Yankees are falling out of something.
We worry about 2022 again, right? Like we're all thinking that in the back of our head, and that's what we get scared of.
But they still won the division.
They didn't have the Baltimore team of 2022 chasing them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But we've seen that Baltimore team has problems now also, right? They just went to Houston and got swept. They are -3 starters. Albert Suarez, who was kind of a little bit of their Luis Gil. Again, myopia. Like there were other guys doing things besides Suarez was this gift they never saw coming, like Luis Gil. He didn't pitch well against the Yankees. He got beat up again. So maybe, it's Cinderella for Luis Gil. Maybe it's Cinderella for that. The Orioles are down 3 starting pitchers. They're a team that's always playing that devilish middle of they want to keep this window open as long as possible, but go for it. And they showed the willingness to go for it by trading 2 guys for Corbin Burns. They will go for it here, but they're going to have the same issue. Like I could see our colleague Mike Puma tweeted something on this. It's something I had heard even before Mike tweeted it, and I believe it, which is I think there's some teams, and he was talking about the Mets in specific. The Mets, if things went right, they're going to, call up Christian Scott again at some point real soon and maybe get Kodai Senga back early in the second half of the season. If they did, they would have a little bit of a surplus of starting pitching. Now, as soon as you think you have a surplus of starting pitching, you don't. That's one of the cliches that's true. But I could see them turning around to a team like the Orioles to get one of their young players and saying, do you like Tyler McGill? Do you like David Peterson? And now you don't get a very good player, if anything, like would Adrian Hauser help you kind of tie the Mets will have some depth there to choose from if they want to do it. We saw with the Texas Rangers, Scherzer came back yesterday and pitched pretty well. Tyler Mahle is already in a rehab. Jacob deGrom is already throwing off of a mound. If they get those guys back, can they turn around and say, we could trade a Michael Lorenzen, we could trade a Dane Dunning, we could trade an Andrew Heaney. So I think there's going to be some teams that are in it, that are buy-sell teams under the right circumstances, and that the Orioles will be aggressive in those areas. But until Luis Gil falls kind of on his face, I think the Yankees have to make sure the starting pitching is as good as possible and try to go round and round. So I do find it a curious start Wednesday night against the Mets to see how he'll do.
Yep, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing that Subway Series, how he performs, and how that Subway Series is always amps the local fans up because it's Mets versus Yankees, even though it might not be what, the rivalry you would hope for. All right, let's go talk about Hogue Analytics. Let's bring in our PA, Tommy Hogan.
What's going on, guys? There was a theory thrown out by Joe Girardi at the end of yesterday's loss against the Braves and Max Fried, and he said that the Yankees struggle versus lefties, and it was something that I hadn't really thought of or heard about until he brought it up. But their last 4 losses have now come against left-handed starters, and they're 9-10 versus lefty starters this season. We saw the Mets move Luis Severino out of the series and put in another left-handed pitcher. They said it was for matchup, so that could be the Mets saying, yep, we know that this is also an issue for the Yankees. So I looked into the numbers a little bit. Versus left-handed hitters, they're 20th in average, they're 10th in on base, 18th in slugging, 15th in OPS, and 24th in hard contact percentage. Now, that's right and around the middle of the pack, so you want to think, oh, they're bad against lefties. But then when you compare it to how they are against righties, they're 4th in average, 3rd in on base, 2nd in slugging, 1st in OPS, and 4th in hard contact percentage. So when you compare it to how they are against righties, yeah, then you can say, okay, this is an issue for them. Out of only 3 Yankees with 60-plus plate appearances this season, only 3 have better splits against lefties than righties. And one of them you would think would be Giancarlo Stanton, who has a career 960 OPS versus lefties. This season, he has a 670 OPS against lefties. So he's not a guy that is helping them out. He's part of the struggles versus lefties. So, Joel, I ask you, is this another hole that the Yankees need to fill at the deadline, is hitting left-handed pitching?
Well, you're producing the show, Tommy. You know that point earlier in the year, in the episode where I said they have a Gleyber Torres, DJ LeMayo, Anthony Rizzo problem? Just go put it back on this, right? Because
Gleyber's one of the guys that hits lefties.
What's that?
Gleyber's one of the guys that hits lefties.
He's if he were hitting it, he's hitting it at like a 700 OPS, right?
It's better than how he is hitting against right-handed.
Right, but like he's hitting against righties like shit, right?
Yes.
It's he's not hitting lefties well. It's like being the tallest jockey. He's generally not hitting well. If him and LeMahieu started hitting lefties, they'd have less of a problem against lefties. They have a LeMahieu-Torres problem right now. And when Rizzo was here, they had a LeMahieu-Torres-Rizzo problem. These are veteran players who there are big salaried guys for them. They take up, like when they're not spending more money, it's partially because obviously they have guys at the top, but then they have guys who are, 20 million, 18 million, 10 million. These are guys that they expect to hit in spring training without an injury. Aaron Boone was talking about leading off DJ LeMahieu. That's where he was going to hit. Anthony Rizzo was the original cleanup hitter of this team. Torres was going to hit 5th or 6th. They need these guys to perform. All the numbers look better if they perform. We've played a half a season now. I would assume they're not going to perform. But if they don't, and the Yankees can solve it, and I don't think you could solve everything in the next 40 days, they are going to have the problem they've had for several seasons, which is their lineup is not long. It is very, very based on usually Judge, in this case, Judge and Soto, maybe Judge Soto Volpe, maybe Judge Soto Volpe, and if he gets healthy, Stanton. But, how long does Stanton stay healthy? This is, Brian Cashman wasn't lying, right? He was like, this is part of who he is. You can't ever depend on it. So the Yankees need one or two things to happen to solve lefties, offense, length of lineup. They need either younger players, Ben Rice and Austin Wells in particular, who I think have upside, to perform well, or they need the older guys who aren't performing well to perform better, or the third option is to find some of this in the market, in a market that isn't deep in this and might not have a lot of sellers. They need their internal guys to be better, and all the offensive numbers get better, including against lefties.
Sure, like Verdugo has bad splits against lefties. Trevino, who's in the past hit lefties, is down again. His slugging is up against lefties, but he's about 60 points lower in average against lefties. So there are some guys even outside of the DJ, the Gleyber, the Rizzos. Stanton, like I mentioned, is not hitting lefties. There are guys outside of that also are struggling against left-handers. And if I could just make one last point, Ryan McMahon is the guy that the number one can fill both corners. He's a left-handed hitter. So I looked, this guy, would he fill both needs? He's top 25 in slugging and on base against left-handers, and top 20 in OPS, and top 5 in all of those.
He's the owner of the Rockies' favorite player he's ever had.
Ryan McMahon?
Yes. Loves Ryan McMahon. One of the reasons Ryan McMahon got
Why is that?
contract there. I'm not sure he's going to get traded. It's not impossible. It's a name that comes up a lot, but the owner loves this player. If he becomes available, the Yankees should expect about 8 to 10 teams trying to get Ryan McMahon besides them. And I always worry about how Colorado players perform outside of that realm, because it really hurts the hitters, because it's another show about how difficult it is to adjust to a world where the ball does break again when you're outside of there. It does fly in a different way. So he'd be a player. You could convince me he's DJ LeMahieu, who the Yankees first got, who will actually be a better player outside of Coors, but Coors position players would scare the crap out of me.
Fair enough. And Tommy and Joel, I want to ask you this while we got Tommy here as well. Is it just bad luck? Because it feels like Jason Dominguez, this would have been a prime spot for him with Giancarlo Stanton going out, and he would have helped a lot of the offensive issues that you're seeing right now with this Yankee squad.
Yeah, I mean, he possibly could have helped. The 7 games was the 7 games or so last year. It was certainly impressive, and he was hitting the ball in the minor leagues again this year. Yeah, it's a terrible break for the Yankees in 2024 and moving forward, because it would have answered some. If he would have been able to play a month straight here, it would have answered you could let Verdugo walk out the door, or you could let Verdugo walk out the door and we don't have to worry about getting another guy even. Because we now seen enough of this to believe that Dominguez, or enough to feel somewhat comfortable that Dominguez will handle it or not handle it, so that you have some further things. So it was for the kid, a terribly timed injury because he would have played, and for the Yankees, a terribly timed injury for 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think you'll see him on the postseason roster, so they still could see enough to warrant that.
A long way from here to the postseason roster. There's a lot of shows. There's a lot of Hogan analytics we have to do between here.
Exactly. Well said, Joel. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you.
All right, Joel, we're going to finish this up, and I'm looking forward to asking you this because it is a prime spot here in New York. Yankees and Mets fans always get amped up for this Subway Series. You've been covering these teams for a while now. I got to ask you, though, what is your favorite, when you think about Subway Series, favorite moment or memory that comes to your mind?
Yeah, there's a lot, obviously, including that they played in a World Series against each other in 2000. But I would go back, if I were picking one time, I'd go back earlier in 2000 because it really did set up that World Series in some ways. On July 8th, 2000, because there had been a rain out earlier in the year when they were going to play, they ended up playing a home-and-home doubleheader on July 8th, 2000. They played at Shea Stadium with like a 1 o'clock start and a Yankee Stadium at 8. And that was, besides that, which was, we have what was called, that was a Saturday. We have a Bulldog edition of the paper. We still do. I think we're one of the last places, maybe the last that has it, which is we have an extra edition on Sunday. So we have to be in earlier on Saturday, like by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that game ended like 4. And to get to the other stadium, there was the only time, I hope it's the only time I'm ever involved in it, they set up for reporters who were covering both games to get on one of the buses, like with the Mets and Yankees, to get a police escort to the other stadium. So I got a police escort in a bus to the other stadium, but I had to write while I was doing it because we had a 5 o'clock deadline. So there was that. But that was the day Dwight Gooden, first time back at Shea Stadium, he won the game for the Yankees in the afternoon. He pitched 5 innings, which was a great story. And then the story that wouldn't end ever was that night in the second inning, Clemens hits Piazza in the head. Piazza had owned Clemens. He had like 3 homers and in 12 at-bats against him and a bunch of hits. And Clemens couldn't beat the Mets as a Yankee early on there. And he was having some difficulties that season. And hits him in the head. And look, I think most on-field brawls are overdone and whatever. I do think that was a day where the Mets needed to come out of the dugout and fight. I do. That's their best player lying on the ground. Did Roger Clemens want to hit him in the head? No, but I think Roger Clemens was the kind of pitcher who was like, I'm throwing up and in, and what happens. And what happened is he gave a concussion to the best player on the other team. And you have to do more than yell from the dugout when that happens and complain about it afterwards. I think that was a moment they needed to come out, and there needed to be like an all-out, which would have made the day even more incredible. But the day was incredible when you consider you had Gooden in the morning, police in the afternoon, police escort to the other stadium, and then by the way, I didn't just get a police escort. Everyone got a police escort. And the Piazza Clemens, which again then carries into the World Series with the broken bat and Clemens hurling it, thinking it's a baseball somehow, or that was the cover story. Clemens was good at cover stories on a lot of issues, So that really. That one in particular, even more than anything that happened in the World Series. And I was there for Dave Malicki. I was there when a guy named Steve Beezer coaxed a scoring balk out of David Cohn, and the Yankees thought it was so little league for the other team to be trying to do that because they hated Bobby Valentine so much. But yeah, a lot of good ones over the years. Matt Franco and David Wright against Mariano Rivera. So yeah. Some really, really, and I'm looking forward to this one. The Mets are playing much better.
Yep.
The Yankees are not. And it's an interesting moment for them to meet in the season.
Yeah, and there's some interesting storylines too, because you got Harrison Bader on the Mets. You got the manager that was your former bench coach, and Carlos Mendoza for the Mets. So you see how him and Boone go back and forth with the moves that they're going to be making. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you cover it, Joel. It's going to be a good time for the New York Post, the Subway Series going on.
Yeah, no, and by the way, no NFL, no NHL, no NBA. We're gonna be the story in town.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Joel. We thank you so much, as always, for talking Yankees baseball and trying to talk us off the ledge, even though they're the best record in the American League.
Hey, when they lose another 5 this week, we'll be back. I'll have a crisis counselor sitting next to me.
You're the best, Joel. Thank you so much, man.